Welcome everyone to the Inver Hills Theatre Zoom performance of An Assembly of Phantasms. We will be presenting two plays deploring the realm of the dead and their connection to the living. In our first story, we take pleasure in bringing you Suspense. Suspense. This notable thriller from stage and screen, fiction and radio, The Hitchhiker by Lucille Fletcher, first presented by the Orson Welles Mercury Theatre of the Air in June of 1946. The play follows a young man on a cross-country journey from Brooklyn, New York to California. However, something strange is going on when a hitchhiker mysteriously keeps appearing along the highway, tormenting the young man. Is he the angel of death sent to guide the young man to the other side? The theme of our story is that death cannot be avoided. Here we go into the shadowy world of phantasms as the Inver Hills Theatre presents The Hitchhiker.
I'm in an auto camp on Route 66 just west of Gallup, New Mexico. I tell it, perhaps it'll help me, keep me from going crazy. I'm not crazy now. I feel perfectly well, except that I'm running a slight temperature. My name is Ronald Adams. I'm 36 years of age, unmarried, tall, dark with a black mustache. I drive a 1940 Buick, license number 6Y175189. Was born in Brooklyn. All this, I know. And I know for a fact that I'm at this moment perfectly sane and that it's not me who's gone mad, but something else. Something utterly beyond my control. I've got to speak quickly. At any minute, the link may break. This may be the last thing I ever tell on Earth. The last night I ever see the stars. 6 days ago, I left Brooklyn to drive to California.
Goodbye, son. Good luck to you, my boy.
Goodbye, Mother. Here, give me a kiss and then I'll go.
I'll come out with you to the car.
Oh, no, stay here. It's raining. Hey, what's this? Tears? I thought you promised me you wouldn't cry.
Oh, I know, dear. I'm sorry, but I do hate to see you go.
Mother, I'll be back. I'll only be on the coast for 3 months.
Oh, it isn't that. It's just the trip, Ronald. I wish you weren't driving.
Oh, Mother, here you go again. People do it every day.
I know, but you'll be careful, won't you? Promise you'll be extra careful. Don't fall asleep or drive fast or pick up any strangers on the road.
Gosh, you'd think I was still 17 to hear you talk.
And wire me as soon as you get to Hollywood.
Of course.
Won't you, son?
Of course I will. Don't you worry. It's just 8 simple days of smooth and simple driving with a hot dog or a hamburger stand every 10 miles. I was in fine spirits. The drive ahead of me, even the loneliness, seemed like a lark, but I reckoned without him. Crossing Brooklyn Bridge that morning in the rain, I saw a man leaning against the cables. He seemed to be waiting for a lift. There were spots of fresh rain on his shoulders. He was carrying a cheap overnight bag in one hand. He was thin, nondescript, with a cap pulled down over his eyes. I would have forgotten him completely, except that just an hour later, while crossing the Pulaski Skyway over the Jersey Flats, I saw him again. At least, he looked like the same person. I could see him quite distinctly, the bag and the cap. I couldn't figure out how he got there, but I figured one of those fast trucks had picked him up and beat me to the Skyway and then let him off. I didn't stop for him. Then, late that night, I saw him again. He was on the new Pennsylvania Turnpike between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. It's 265 miles long with a very high speed limit. I was just slowing down for one of the tunnels, and I saw him, standing under an arc light by the side of the road. I could see him quite distinctly, in the bag, in the cap, even the spots of fresh rain spattered over his shoulders. He hallooed at me this time.
Hello. Hello.
I stepped on the gas like a shot. It's lonely country through the Alleghenies, and I had no intentions of stopping. Besides, the coincidences or whatever it was gave me the willies. I stopped at the next gas station.
Yes, sir.
Fill her up.
Certainly, sir. Check your oil, sir.
No, thanks.
Nice night, isn't it?
Yes, it hasn't been raining here recently, has it?
Not a drop of rain all week.
Oh, I suppose that hasn't done your business any harm.
Oh, people drive through here all kinds of weather. Mostly business, you know. There aren't many cars on the turnpike this season of the year.
I suppose not. What about hitchhikers?
Hitchhikers? Here?
Oh, what's the matter? Don't you ever see any?
Not much. If we did, it'd be a sight for sore eyes.
Why?
Oh, a guy'd be a fool who started out to hitch rides on this road. Look at it.
Then you've never seen anybody.
No. Maybe they get the lift before the turnpike starts. I mean, you know, just before the toll house. But then it'd be a mighty long ride. Most cars wouldn't want to pick up a guy for that long ride. And you know, this is pretty lonesome country here. Mountains and woods. You ain't seen anybody like that, have you?
Oh, no, not at all. I just, a technical question.
Oh, I see. Well, that'll just be $1.49 with the tax.
The thing gradually passed through my mind as sheer coincidence. I had a good night's sleep in Pittsburgh. I didn't think about the man all next day until just outside of Zanesville, Ohio. I saw him again. It was a bright, sunshiny afternoon. The peaceful Ohio fields, brown with the autumn stubble, lay dreaming in the golden light, and I was driving slowly, drinking it in, when the road suddenly ended in a detour. And in front of the barrier, he was standing. Let me explain about his appearance before I go on. I repeat, there was nothing sinister about him. He was as drab as a mud fence, nor was his attitude menacing. He merely stood there, waiting, almost drooping a little, the cheap overnight bag in his hand. He looked as though he'd been waiting there for hours. And he looked up. And he hailed me. He started to walk forward.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
No, not just now, sorry.
Going to California?
No, the other way, going to New York, sorry. After I got the car back on the road again, I felt like a fool. Yet the thought of picking him up and having him sit beside me was somehow unbearable. At the same time, I felt more than ever unspeakably alone. Hour after hour went by. The fields, the towns ticked off one by one. The light changed. I knew now that I was going to see him again. And though I dreaded the sight, I caught myself searching the side of the road, waiting for him to appear.
Yeah? What is it? What do you want?
You sell sandwiches and pop here, don't you?
Yeah, we do in the daytime, but we're closed up for the night.
I know, but I was wondering if you could possibly let me have a cup of coffee, black coffee.
My wife's the cook. She's in bed.
No, don't shut the door, please. Just listen, just a minute ago, there was a man standing here, right beside the stand. A suspicious looking man. You see, I don't mean to disturb you. I was just driving along and I happened to look and there he was.
What was he doing?
Well, nothing.
You've been taking a nip. That's what you've been doing. Now, on your way before I call out Sheriff Oakes.
I got into the car again and drove on slowly. I was beginning to hate the car. If I could have found a place to stop, to rest a little. I was in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri now. The few resort places there were closed. Only an occasional log cabin, seemingly deserted. That's all that broke the monotony, wooded, wild landscape. I had seen him at the roadside stand. I knew I'd see him again, maybe at the next turn of the road. I knew that when I saw him next, I would run him down. But I didn't see him again. I didn't see him until late next afternoon. I'd stopped the car at a sleepy little junction just across the border into Oklahoma to let a train pass by. When he appeared across the tracks, leaning against a telephone pole. A perfectly airless, dry day. The red clay of Oklahoma was baking under the southwestern sun, yet there were spots of fresh rain on his shoulders. I couldn't stand that. Without thinking blindly, I started the car across the tracks. He didn't even look up at me. He was staring at the ground. I stepped on the gas hard, veering the wheel sharply toward him. I could hear the train in the distance, but I didn't care. Then, something went wrong with the car. It stalled right on the tracks. The train was coming closer. I could hear the bell ringing and the cry of its whistle. Still, he stood there. Now I knew that he was beckoning me to my death. Well, I frustrated him that time. The starter worked at last. I managed to back up. When the train was gone, when the train passed, he was gone. I was all alone in the hot, dry, airless afternoon. After that, I knew I had to do something. I didn't know who this man was or what he wanted of me. I only knew that from now on, I mustn't let myself alone on the road for 1 minute. Hello there. Like a ride?
Well, what do you think? How far are you going?
Where do you want to go?
Amarillo, Texas?
I'll drive you there.
Gee. You mind if I take off my shoes? My dogs are killing me.
Go right ahead.
Oh, what a break this is.
Hitchhike much?
Sure. Only it's tough sometimes in these great open spaces to get the breaks.
Yeah, I should think it would be. Though, I'll bet you get a good pickup in a fast car. If you did, you could get places faster than, say, another person in another car, couldn't you?
I don't get you.
Well, take me for instance. Suppose I'm driving across the country, say at a nice clip at about 45 miles an hour. Couldn't a girl like you just standing beside the side of the road, waiting for a lift, beat me to town or any town, provided that she got picked up every time in a car doing from 65 to 70 miles an hour?
I don't know. What difference does it make?
Oh, no difference. Just crazy idea I had sitting here in the car.
Oh, imagine spending your time in a swell car, thinking of things like that.
What would you do instead?
What would I do if I was a good-looking fella like yourself? Why, I'd just enjoy myself every minute of the time. I'd sit back and relax. And if I saw a good-looking girl on the side of the road, hey, look out!
Did you see him too?
See who?
That man standing by the barbed wire fence.
I didn't see anybody. There was nothing there but a bunch of cows and that barbed wire fence.
No?
What'd you think he was doing? Trying to run into that barbed wire fence?
There was a man there, I tell you, a thin gray man with an overnight bag in his hand, and I was trying to run him down.
Run him down? You mean kill him?
You say you didn't see him back there. You sure?
I didn't see a soul. And as far as that's concerned...
Watch for him. Keep watching. Keep your eyes peeled on the road. He'll turn up again. Maybe any minute now. There! Look! There!
How does this door work? I'm getting out of here.
Did you see him that time?
No, I didn't see him that time. And personally, mister, I don't expect never to see him. All I want to do is go on living, and I don't see how I'll do that very long driving with you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I I don't know what came over me. Please, don't go.
So if you'll excuse me.
You can't go. Listen, how would you like to go to California? I'll drive you to California.
Seeing big elephants all the way? Oh, no thanks. No thanks. Thanks just the same.
Listen, please, just 1 minute, please.
You know what I think you need, big boy? Not a girlfriend, no. Just a good old dose of sleep.
Please.
There, I got it now.
Now, you can't go, please.
Leave your hands off me, you hear? Leave your hands off me.
She ran from me as though I were a monster. A few minutes later, I saw a passing truck pick her up. I knew now that I was utterly alone. I was in the heart of the great Texas prairies. There wasn't a car on the road after the truck went by. Tried to figure out what to do, how to get a hold of myself. If I could find a place to rest, or even if I could sleep right here in the car along the side of the road for a few hours. I was getting my winter coat out of the back seat to use as a blanket when I saw him coming toward me, emerging from the herd of moving steer.
Hello? Hello?
Maybe I should have spoken to him then, fought it out then and there. For now, he began to be everywhere. Wherever I stopped, even for a moment, for gas, for oil, for a drink of pop, a cup of coffee, a sandwich, he was there. I saw him standing outside the auto camp in Amarillo when I dared to slow down. He was sitting near the drinking fountain just next to the little camping spot just across the border into New Mexico. He was waiting for me outside the Navajo reservation where I stopped to check my tires. I saw him in Albuquerque when I bought 20 gallons of gas. I was afraid to stop now. I began to drive faster and faster. I was in a lunar landscape now, the great arid mesa country of New Mexico. I drove through it with the indifference of a fly crawling over the face of the moon. Now he didn't even wait for me to stop. Unless I drove at 85 miles an hour over those endless roads, he waited for me at every other mile. I'd see his figure, shadowless, flitting before me, still in its same attitude over the cold and lifeless ground, flitting up over dried up rivers, over broken stones cast up by old glacial upheavals, flitting in that pure and cloudless air. I was beside myself when I finally reached Gallup, New Mexico. This morning, there's an auto camp here, cold, almost deserted this time of year. I went inside and asked if there was a telephone I could use. I had the feeling that if only I could speak to someone familiar, someone I loved, I could pull myself together.
Your call, please. Your call, please.
Long distance.
Long distance? Certainly.
This is long distance.
I'd like to put in a call to my home to Brooklyn, New York. I'm Ronald Adams. The number is Beechwood 20828.
Certainly. I'll try to get it for you. New York for Gallup.
New York.
Gallup, New Mexico, calling Beechwood 20828.
I'd read somewhere that love could banish demons. It was in the middle of the morning, and I knew Mother would be home. I pictured her tall and white-haired in her crisp house dress going about her tasks. It'd be enough, I thought, just to hear the even calmness of her voice.
Will you please deposit the $3.85? When you have finished, will you please deposit the $3 for the first 3 minutes? When you have deposited $1.50, will you please wait until I have collected the money? All right, deposit another $1.50. May you please deposit the remaining 85 cents? Ready with Brooklyn. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Mrs. Adams' residence.
Hello? Hello, Mother?
This is Mrs. Adams' residence. Who is it you wish to speak to, please?
Who's this?
This is Mrs. Whitney.
Mrs. Whitney? I don't know any Mrs. Whitney. Is this Beechwood 20828?
Yes.
Well, where's my mother? Where's Mrs. Adams?
Mrs. Adams is not at home. She's still in the hospital.
The hospital?
Yes. Who is this calling, please? Is it a member of the family?
What's she in the hospital for?
She's been prostrated for 5 days. Nervous breakdown. But who is this calling?
Nervous breakdown? Well, my mother never was nervous.
It's all been very sudden. His oldest son was killed just 6 days ago in an automobile accident on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Death of her oldest son, Ronald? Hey, what's this? What number is this?
This is Beechwood 20828. It's all been very sudden.
Your 3 minutes are up, sir. Your 3 minutes are up, sir. Your 3 minutes are up, sir.
And so I'm sitting here in this deserted auto camp in Gallup, New Mexico, trying to think, trying to get a hold of myself. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy. Outside, it's night. The vast, soulless night of New Mexico. A million stars are in the sky, and ahead of me stretch 1,000 miles of empty mesa. Mountains, prairies, deserts. Somewhere among them, he's waiting for me. Somewhere I shall know who he is and who I am.
Welcome everyone to Inver Hills Theatre's performance of An Assembly of Phantasms and our second story, An Echo Murmured Back. A story based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe and adapted by Shauna C. Evans. In this story, we weave together several of Poe's poems and stories that focus on death and the dark side of existence, including The Raven, Annabel Lee, The Mask of the Red Death, The Telltale Heart, and A Dream Within a Dream. Explore with us the dark, mysterious world of the macabre by one of the greatest writers of horror and suspense. Sit back and let your imagination soar as the Inver Hills Theatre presents An Echo Murmured Back.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
'Tis some visitor tapping at my chamber door, only this and nothing more. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know.
By the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me.
I was a child and he was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love.
I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me.
And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea,
A wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her highborn kingsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea.
the angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying him and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night.
Chilling and killing my Annabel Lee.
But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea,
Can ever dissever my soul from the soul of thee, beautiful Annabel Lee, For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea.
Distinctly, I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my butch surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating.
'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more. The Red Death had long devastated the country.
But the Prince Prospero was,
Happy and dauntless.
and sagacious.
When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence
1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of the court. With them, I'll retire to the deep seclusion of one of my castellated abbeys.
He selected an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. It was toward the close of the 5th or 6th month of this seclusion, and while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero called his
Friends, prepare to be entertained at a masked ball of the most unusual magnificence. It will be a voluptuous scene, this masquerade, to be held in the imperial suite of 7 rooms. Beware, the rooms are so irregularly disposed that you cannot see into more than one at a time. There is a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn, a novel effect.
to the right and left. In the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened.
That at the eastern extremity was hung in blue, and vividly blue were its windows.
The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple.
The third was green throughout, and so were the casements.
The 4th was furnished and lighted with orange.
The 5th with white, the 6th with violet.
The 7th apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were scarlet, a deep blood color.
Now, in no one of these 7 apartments is there any lamp or candelabrum amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof. There is no light of any kind emanating from lamp or candle within this suite of chambers, but in the corridors that follows the suite, there stands, opposite to each window, a heavy tripod bearing a brazier of fire that protects its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illuminates each room, and thus are produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances.
But in the black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streams upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes is ghastly in the extreme, and produces so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered, that there are few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all.
It was in this apartment also that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the full circuit of the face and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that at each lapse of the hour, the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance to hearken the sound. and thus the waltzers perforce ceased their evolutions, and there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company. And while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly.
But these other apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life. And the revel went warmly on, until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. And then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before.
Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer.
Sir, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you.
Here I opened wide the door, darkness there and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word.
Lenore!
Lenore?
This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word.
Lenore!
Merely this, and nothing more.
And thus, too, it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sunk into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. And the rumor of this new presence, having spread itself whisperingly around there, arose at length from the whole company a buzz or murmur expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then, finally, of terror, of horror, and of disgust.
In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. The murmur had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror.
It was in the blue room where stood the prince with a group of pale courtiers by his side.
Who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements.
But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the murmur had inspired the whole party, there were found no one to put forth hand to seize him, so that unimpeded he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first.
Through the blue chamber to the purple.
Through the purple to the green.
Through the green to the orange.
Through this again to the white.
And even thence to the violet, ere a decided movement had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero,
maddening with rage and the shame of his own momentary cowardice,
rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers,
while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft along a drawn dagger and had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure.
When the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of the revelers at once threw themselves into the black apartment, gasped at the unutterable horror at finding the grave cerements and corpse-like mask which they handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in their blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and each died in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay, and the red death held illimitable dominion over all.
Sir or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you.
Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before.
Surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more.
Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped, nor stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more.
True, nervous, very.
Very dreadfully nervous I had been and am.
But why will you say that I am mad?
The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man.
He had never wronged you. He had never given you insult. For his gold you had no desire.
I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees. Very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever.
I fancy you mad. Madmen know nothing.
But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. And I did this for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found that the eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye.
Upon the 8th night,
I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and
perhaps he heard you, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled.
no,
Back?
his room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through the fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out,
Who's there?
Keep still and say nothing.
For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall.
A groan of mortal terror. That is not a groan of pain or of grief.
Oh no, 'Twas a low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself,
"It's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor."
or,
"It's merely a cricket which has made a single chirp."
yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain.
All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard,
To feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern.
So you opened it?
You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it.
I saw it with perfect distinctiveness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chills the very marrow in my bones.
But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely on the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
I know that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart.
It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I can maintain the ray upon the eye.
Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increases. It grows quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must be extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore.
Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou art sure no craven. Yes, the grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore.
Quoth the raven,
"Nevermore."
much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with singing bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door with such name as Nevermore.
Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still.
But the beating grows louder. I think thy heart must burst.
And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room.
"Ah!"
He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the very heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
You are mad.
You will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and placed them all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards.
So cleverly, so cunningly that no human eye,
Not even his.
could have detected anything wrong.
There was nothing to wash out. No stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock.
Still dark as midnight.
As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door.
But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered.
Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before.
Quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
startled by the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken.
Doubtless, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore.
But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled the cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking, fancy unto fancy thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat, engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight floated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight floated o'er, she shall press. Nevermore.
I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police.
A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises.
I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome.
The shriek.
It was my own in a dream.
The old man.
Absent in the country. Let me take you all over the house. I bade you search. Search well.
He led them at length to the old man's chamber. He showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed.
In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the chamber and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim.
The officers are satisfied.
My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease.
They sat, and while he answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things.
But ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct, and continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice.
Yet the sound increases.
And what could I do?
It is a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently.
But the noise steadily increases.
I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations.
But the noise steadily increases.
Why would they not be gone?
He paid the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fear by the observations of the men.
But the noise steadily increases.
Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards.
But the noise arose over and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder.
Still the men shouted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not?
Almighty God, no, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew, they were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this desertion. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again, hark!
Louder, 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 louder.
Villains, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart.
Then methought the air grew denser, perfumes from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor.
Wretch, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget's lost Lenore.
Quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
Prophet, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore.
quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now.
Thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet, if hope has flown away in a night, or in a day, in a vision, or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep. While I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream?
Prophet, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Iden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore.
quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend.
he shrieked upstarting.
Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door.
Quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
and the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.